Hello, welcome everybody. Can I get a quick thumbs up if you can hear my audio okay? I see a thumbs up. Thanks, Samantha. Thanks, Michelle. Thanks. Let's see, I don't want to miss anybody. Jody, a lot of thumbs came up, so I appreciate that, guys. Thank you. We have about a minute before we'll get started, and that might give a few more people some time to hop into our meeting, but we do appreciate your time here today. Okay, everyone, it is 12 o'clock on the dot, so we're going ahead and get started today. Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Dr. Leona Lopez, and I'm the Director of Veteran and Military Student Services for the University of Colorado, Denver, and the University of Colorado Anschutz. I also have the privilege and honor of being a part of the CO-ACME Executive Committee. And on behalf of CO-ACME and our colleagues with MilVet Navigator, it is my pleasure to welcome you to our event today. Before I introduce our guests, I want to go over just some quick housekeeping items. We're going to be taking questions as they come in today. So any questions you have for our guest speaker, please make sure that you are pushing those into the chat or into the Q&A. And myself or Aiden will be helping get those over to RJ. So please feel free to get those to us in real time. If for any reason we don't get to all of the questions today, we'll make sure that our guest is getting those answers out, and we'll get those out to you within 2 weeks of the close of the event. We'll also have a little bit of time for some Q&A after the presentation as well. With that said, our guest today is RJ Jenkins from the Columbia Center for Veteran Transition and Integration. And we're so pleased to have him here today. And we look forward to his presentation titled From Assessment to Action, How to Conduct a Hardcore Audit of Your Veteran Support Programs. Please join me in giving a warm CO-ACME and MilVet Navigator welcome to RJ Jenkins. RJ, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Leona. Thanks to the team. It's absolutely wonderful to be here, and I'm looking forward to today's topic. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Hi, Jody. Nice to see you. Your comments are all popping up. It's so nice to see several of you. I notice a couple of familiar names, but many of you I've never met before. So I'll just give a really quick introduction, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. And let me see real quick if I can just pop up. do 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 do. And Leona, you just let me know if you can see what I'm. Can you see that slide?
We can see you. It looks great.
Brilliant. Okay. Um, So hi, everybody. Again, my name is RJ Jenkins. I serve as the Director of Education at the Columbia University Center for Veteran Transition and Integration. We are a center that lives at Columbia University in New York City. Our physical space is on Columbia's Morningside campus at 116th Street and Broadway in New York City. Um, but we do a lot of work with our veterans on our Columbia campus, but we are also a force multiplier organization for aspirational colleges, universities, employers, and veteran service organizations that are trying to build stronger cultures of support for veterans, transitioning service members, and their families. And what's really exciting about, I mean, we all have cool jobs. This is certainly the coolest job I've ever had. I get to travel across the United States and really work closely with colleges and universities that are thinking about their veteran support ecosystems and are at all levels of maturity around doing this type of work. So I work with colleges and universities that have long-standing, established, well-funded programs with multiple staff members who are doing this work and are trying to figure out, are there opportunities for growth, change? Are there any threats that they need to be proactive about? I also work with a lot of colleges and universities that are doing this work on the backs of a single person. And actually, most of the folks that I work with are single person operations, one higher education professional, often a certifying official, often someone who's also wearing several other hats. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this situation in higher education where one person wears multiple hats, and they're doing school certifying official work. They're also doing cultural competency for their faculty and staff. They're also running programming. They're also taking care of a cohort of student veterans. So work with a lot of those folks as well. And it's extraordinary work. I learn so much all the time. And and I'm really grateful to be in this space. I also want to be clear, also from the front, I am a civilian veteran serving professional, and so everything that I've learned about this population, I've learned from my student veterans who were kind enough to teach me what I needed to know to do the work effectively. So I'm very grateful to all of them. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do today. As you can see from the slide that I'm sharing, we're going to talk about conducting a hardcore audit today of veteran support. And I know for those of you who maybe have seen me at a NASPA or who have seen me at a NatCon, I do apologize. A lot of people think that maybe this is what it means to conduct a hardcore audit of your veteran support initiatives. Um, uh, and it's not this. It's also not going to be this. We're thinking a little bit. Um, we're thinking a little more expansively of hardcore, just to mean really thinking seriously about what it means to do this work. Um, and where this actually came from, the flash diagnostic tool that I'm going to show you all and share with you all today, um, it really came out of discussions that I was having with colleagues all across the country. Some, and I don't know if you share this frustration, but just a little bit of frustration around this terminology, military friendly. We see a lot of talk about military friendliness, and as I think you probably know, this term doesn't actually mean a whole lot, and is used by a whole bunch of different people for a whole bunch of different purposes, often for the purposes of marketing and communication, often for the purposes of recruitment, but it's very, very difficult to know what exactly it means to be a military friendly institution. Um, so the sort of secret that is the engine of this presentation is that I'm not positive that it means a whole lot. Um, to talk about military friendliness, and it only means as much as any particular institution builds around the discussion, right? What is the definition of that? What does that actually mean? I'll also say the second sort of guiding principle of what we're going to talk about today is this term best practices. Um, so on the conference circuit, in professional development, when we have conversations with our colleagues in this space, there's often a lot of sharing of best practices. Um, and I also just want to start off by saying what you're going to see today is actually um, a gentle pushback against the notion that of best practices. What I mean by that is that I've never heard anyone tell me about a best practice that my next question wasn't um, best practice for who, best practice where, best practice at what kind of institution, best practice with what kind of population of students. Are you working primarily with veterans? Are you working primarily with dependents? Are you working in a resource rich ecosystem? Are you working in a resource constrained ecosystem? Do you have leadership at the top? Are you enjoying support from top-down leadership? What kind of ecosystem do you have beyond your campus? Are you plugged into community resources? Are you working in a regional capacity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? You could sort of answer or ask these clarifying questions sort of ad nauseum, right? Best practice for whom? And so I just not a big fan of best practice language. I think a lot of times what happens, especially in resource-constrained environments, we hear people talk about best practices, and all it does is really kind of make us feel bad about ourselves, right? It makes us feel like there's something we need to be doing that we aren't doing, or shouldn't be doing. I have also found, and I don't know if those of you out there agree with me, a lot of times the people who are deciding what best practices are big schools with lots of money. And I, to quote Elle Woods, in that wonderful film, I object, right? I object to the notion that best practices, Legally Blonde, of course, is the film. Um, I object to the notion that big schools with lots of money should be telling us all what our best practices are. And I know that several of you have just spit your Diet Coke because you're like, RJ, you work at Columbia University and it's a big school with a lot of money. I'm not here to tell anyone what their best practices are. The tool that I'm going to share with you today is actually a tool that gives people the capacity to decide what the working practice is that works on their campus with their population in their political ecosystem, right? So I am not here to tell all of you, here is how you should be doing this work. I think that that's not a thing. Um, what I am going to do is provide a free and easy to use tool that will help everyone kind of get their arms around what kinds of questions you can be asking to sort of determine where the strengths are and where maybe some of the potential weaknesses or opportunities are. So I just kind of wanted to start there. So number one, military friendly, don't love that term, not sure exactly what it means. And it certainly gets used a lot in different ways by different people to mean different things in different contexts. And also not a big best practices guy. Best practices cannot be understood properly outside of specific institutional contexts. So don't ever let anyone sort of shame you with their list of best practices. Um, my antidote or my corrective or my pushback or my protest to best practices discourse is thinking about metrics that we can use that are going to be a little bit more helpful. And that's where we have the flash diagnostic. So let me be really clear from the outset. I'm going to share this tool. I'm going to walk through it over the course of the next 30 minutes or so. Um, I am then going to provide a brief survey at the end of this session where you will have the opportunity to request that we send you this tool. So the good news is by being here today, we're just going to hand you this thing. It is completely free. It has you need no budget line item for this. You don't need to make a resource request from anybody. This is a radically open tool that we believe can be really helpful to folks, and we want people to use it and we want it to start conversations. And we'll also talk a little bit about how it might lead to a collaboration between your school and Columbia CVTI. But we're going to talk a little bit about this now. So what are you looking at here? So the first thing you'll notice in yellow at the top is working practices. Working practices is our CVTI protest against best practices, right? What is working on your campus? What practices, what strategies, what approaches, what methodologies are working for you, right? What are the things that you're doing that are helping you get the kinds of results that you want from your students and for your students? So that's the first thing. The second thing you'll notice in the structure of this document, and this, by the way, what you're looking at is a sort of cover document that gives you a 35,000-foot view of the entire tool. There are 8 metrics: understanding your population, connecting communities, self-inventorying campus resources, implementing empowering policies, mentoring students, developing veteran talent, building institutional capacity, and advocating commitment. Those are our sort of 8 pillars that we talk about sort of large areas where schools can sort of hardcore audit, kind of what they're doing in those areas. So those are the metrics. But what you will also notice right away, and this is like, if I could say one thing about this whole thing at the outset, and then you guys can just log off and go get lunch or whatever, is you'll notice that when we talk about military friendliness, Um, it instantly begs a binary categorization. You either are military friendly or you're not, right? Like, and I've always wondered, like, so at what point do I tip over into the military friendly bucket, or at what point do I tip into the military unfriendly bucket, right? It just doesn't, that framework gives us sort of two choices. And I don't know about you, right? But in my experience, this work is far more nuanced and far more complicated than you do it or you don't do it. Take mentorship, for example. Um, Veteran mentorship, mentoring student veterans can look 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different campuses and can be effective in a variety of ways or not. So for me to say, oh, we either do mentor our veterans or we don't is not a particularly helpful thing to say. I'd rather say, how do you mentor your veterans? How does that culture work? How does that program work? What kinds of outcomes are you getting? Everything sort of exists to me on a spectrum. A spectrum is a much more useful way to think about this. And so you'll notice here that instead of understanding your population, you understand it or you don't. Connecting communities, you either connect your student veterans or you don't. Campus resources, you have them or you don't, right? That's not at all how we think about this. Instead, we've created what we call maturity levels. And the maturity levels allow us to think about where our institution is at the moment in maturity relative to a particular area. And you'll notice that the maturity levels are laid out as initiating stage, rising practice, robust foundation, and transformative leader. So, and I'll go ahead and just shift over here so that you can see these a little more closely, right? Initiating stage, your institution is currently at the beginning of its journey of adopting practices or has a few practices in place. I want you to notice how different this is from, for example, saying you're unsatisfactory or you're failing, right? That's just to me like never been a super helpful way to encourage folks to build better culture is to tell them that they're failing. And just so we're clear, it is entirely possible for an institution to fail its students in a variety of ways. I'm not pretending that that doesn't happen. But when we're thinking about auditing our practices, I think it's important to sort of use better language. And so if we're at the initiating stage of something, it just means that we really don't have anything in place yet, right? We're just starting the conversation. The rising practice maturity level is an institution that's implementing some practices, but is not implementing a majority of practices. And we'll talk a little bit about those. Robust foundation, your institution is currently implementing a majority of practices, also potentially developing some unique practices, right? So folks that are in a robust foundation category relative to any of these metrics, not only are they doing sort of robust programming or robust initiatives in this area, but they might even be doing something unique or something cool that's really just working on their campus, but they're proud of it, right? They're maybe going to conferences to talk about it. And then the transformative leader is an institution that is implementing practices and is has leadership buy-in, and this is sort of a part of the culture. So again, one of the first things you'll notice here is really trying to step away from binaries and really trying to move toward a way of thinking about this that is a little bit more nuanced. Um, and what it means too, I think really importantly, is it means that we can be at different levels of maturity all across the spectrum relative to all 8 of our metrics, right? So I'll just go ahead in the interest of full transparency and disclosure. I will tell you that at Columbia University, for example, where I work, we are not a transformative leader according to metric 1 of understanding our population. We're not a robust foundation in metric 1. We're really a rising practice. We're, because of the way information is shared at Columbia, because of the way that different schools own different information, because of the way the registrar works relative to other academic units, it's actually very difficult for us in any sort of centralized way to understand who is military connected on our campus at any given time. We can figure it out, but it takes a lot of manual processes. It takes a lot of relationship building. It takes a lot of favors across institutional units, right? People doing favors and collegial favors for there's nothing systematized about how this works at Columbia. And so we're at a maturity level of an initiating stage according to that particular metric, even though I would say across our veteran ecosystem, we're probably closer to a robust practice. So again, this gives us just a little bit of an opportunity to be a little bit more nuanced, and I hope that that makes sense here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to show you the actual tool. And we're just going to walk through these metrics one by one. We're going to do it fairly quickly, just so you can get a sense of how this works. Leon, I do notice that someone has a question.
Yeah, I wanted to get it started and get those creative juices flowing for people who might have
Yeah.
questions but be too shy to ask. Veterans and military are very much a misunderstood population on campus, and they're often treated like traditional students, although they are not. Do you have any advice on leadership buy-in, for those who fail to realize the uniqueness of this demographic?
Yeah, so and when we talk about metric one, I'll talk a little bit about this. Let me just move back to this really quickly. So in this particular case, understanding your population, metric one, is more about, do we even know who on our campus is military connected? Where I would touch on this is actually metric number 7, Leona, building institutional capacity. We'll talk about it when we get there, but building institutional capacity is the metric where we talk about what are you doing on your campus to help faculty and staff understand who these students are and how their needs are different from other students on campus, right? Um, and I think that there are schools that do a lot of work in that area. I think there are schools that are just getting started with that conversation. I also, Leona, I don't know if you agree, but something I hear a lot across schools is it's difficult to get faculty to take the time to engage in some of this cultural competency. They're busy. It can be difficult. It can be difficult to make that work. So when we get to metric 7, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about this. But I absolutely agree with you that not only is this a hard population to understand sort of logistically who on your campus is military connected and how, but also what can we do to help our faculty and staff really understand what this population needs. And it requires some real effort. So we'll talk a little bit more about it in a bit. Let me go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing so that I can share a different page. And we're going to get right into the flash diagnostic. Okay. So you should all be able to see now that sort of central, that page we started with. And again, you'll notice here, the primary question of the flash diagnostic is, how can we build stronger cultures of support for veteran and military connected students that are distinctive to your own environment and unique to your own population, even with limited staff, scarce financial resources, and other constraints, right? So here's the third thing I want to say before we jump in. One, military friendly or not, that binary logic we think is not helpful. So we've created maturity levels. Um, Number two, you'll notice we're not talking about best practices. We're talking about working practices. Number three, um, we think that every single school should be able to create these kind of audits, and that auditing tool should work in a way that does not fundamentally privilege well-resourced institutions. The auditing tool, the tool we use to better understand our ecosystem, should not innately privilege big schools with big budgets. That means that if you are a single person doing this work on your campus, or you're a small school, or you have a small veteran population, this tool that I'm about to show you should be able to help you audit your veteran ecosystem, and you should be able to learn about the things you're doing well, even if you don't have a huge budget or a huge staff or a huge endowment from senior staff or senior administration. So that's the other thing that this tool is meant to do. It's meant to empower schools that don't have big budgets to really think about their support ecosystems in a way that's helpful. And I think that you'll see that in the tool. So let's go ahead and start talking about the metrics really quickly. We'll do that for about 20 minutes or so. The first is understanding your veteran and military connected population. Okay, so let me show you how this sort of works so that you can get a sense of it. So you should be able to see the title. Um, and then what you'll see is do you utilize the following working practices? So for understanding your veteran and military connected population, right, it's hard to support our population if we don't know who our population is. It's hard to build programs. It's hard to have veteran empowering policies when we don't even know who's military connected on our campus. We don't know who the veterans are. We don't know who the dependents are. We don't know who the spouses are. If it's hard to get a sense of that, and again, I'm telling you as a person who works at Columbia, we actually really struggle with this. Not because we're not interested in who they are, right? But I see a comment just came in about technical infrastructure. 1,000%. It can have a lot to do with technical infrastructure. It can have to do with the way that your university manages data and shares data. It can be about the types of information that your university or college collects when students apply or when they matriculate, right? So very often it has less to do with a culture of wanting to know or not wanting to know, and much more to do with technical infrastructure, especially around the moment of admission. So you'll see here, do you utilize the following working practices on your campus? Do you have centralized veteran resources? What kind of data infrastructure or collection practices do you have? Do you perform any sort of analysis around who is on your campus? Do you do any insight work? And is there any participatory observation and embedded listening? Do you know who your veterans are as people? And then do you get to know them, right? Do you have a sense of what their stories are? Do you have a sense of what their military connectedness means? What kind of service are they bringing to the table? And so these are a set of working practices. Now, let me be very, very clear, and you're going to see this over and over in the metrics. A, B, C, D, and E can be followed by F, G, H, I, J, K, meaning we have given you A, B, C, D, and E to give you a sense of the types of things that you might think about in this particular metric. But what this does not mean is that you need to check off A, B, C, D, and E in order to be a robust foundation or a transformative leader. This list is just meant to give you a sense of the types of things we think about when we think about this metric. And then we give you the maturity levels, and we create unique maturity levels. Create unique language for every single metric. So for the first two metrics, I'm going to go ahead and read through these, and then for the remainder, I won't, because again, you can access this tool. But you'll see here the initiating stage of metric one, no centralized hub for student resources, minimal data on the veteran population, ad hoc support with no systematized listening practices, right? So if that kind of sounds like your institution, then you would be somewhere in the initiating stage and you would sort of grant yourself 0 to 3 points, depending on where you feel like you are in there. And remember, even in the individual maturity levels, we create a, a a range, right? So maybe you literally don't know anything about your veterans on campus. I doubt that that's anyone in this room, but that would be a 0, right? Or maybe you know some, right? But just not a lot. And maybe that would be a 3. And this is where you can get together and have cool conversations with your staff or even with your students to get a sense of where you feel like you are. In the rising practice phase, you have emerging veteran center or contact. You have basic demographic and academic tracking of your veterans. You might do one-time surveys to get a sense of how your veterans are experiencing your campus. In the robust foundation maturity level, you have an active centralized data system. You understand who's on your campus. You're using different metrics as part of strategic planning for your students. And then a transformative leader in this space would be a dynamic ecosystem with open access to veteran data and analytics. You're getting narratives from your student veterans, and your veterans are actually helping you co-design practices around data and ethnography, right? Very few of us are in that place, and that's okay. I certainly know that my institution is not a transformative leader in this particular space, but I will tell you that I've worked with some community colleges where they have a very, very sophisticated grasp on who's on their campus and the stories that those students bring. So here's a perfect example, folks, of a place where a small college with maybe a small veteran support staff may actually know a lot more about the veterans on their campus than a large school with a big budget does, right? Because size in this particular case may have an inverse relationship to how well we know our veteran population. So you can get a sense here already that, again, this tool really works hard to not automatically privilege large schools with large programs, large support ecosystem, and large spending possibilities. And then as we go down a little bit, you'll just see here each of these things and a little worksheet where you can kind of figure out where you are relative to these things. And the most important part of this particular worksheet is F, right? There's the write in. There's the opportunity to write in other things that we haven't put here because these are particular things that work on your campus. Let's go to metric 2, connecting your communities to resources and each other. So this is, what are we doing on our campus to create community and to connect veterans to resources and to other veterans on our campus? And again, we provide A through E of the types of working practices that we might consider in this particular metric. Are there veteran-specific student organizations? Are there cross-group networking structures, meaning does the veteran group or does the SVA chapter interact with other student groups? Is there any communications infrastructure on your campus to speak to veteran students specifically? Do you have a veteran newsletter? Do you have a set of emails that go out just to your military connected population? Are there orientation and onboarding practices that connect veterans to resources from the moment they arrive on campus? What does your recruitment strategy look like? That for some schools might even happen before they get to campus rather than once they get to campus. And do you have any belonging or affinity space? Is there a physical space on your campus? I want you to notice here, and I'm just going to shout it from the rooftops. You'll notice how consciously this tool does not say, do you have a veteran center? We refuse to say that. And the reason we refuse to say that is because um, a veteran center may not make sense on every single campus, right? I know that there are a million people out there that are going to try to tell you that the best practice is that you need a space. And a lot of times, a space is a wonderful amenity for student veterans, right? If your student veterans want space, if you're able to create space, if you have the budget for space, that can work really well. But there are also a lot of ways to build belonging and affinity that do not necessarily translate to square footage. And I am tired of schools that are not able to afford a space or create a space feel like they're not doing the work effectively. Because I just think that that's not a nuanced way to think about how this work can be done. So you'll notice in the flash diagnostic, we say distinct belonging and affinity space integration. And what we mean by that is, what are you doing on your campus to create a sense of belonging among your students? Um, for us at Columbia, that's not necessarily having a veteran lounge, but that is presenting the military flags in the student lounge for other students, right? Making sure that veterans see themselves represented in spaces that students use, right? Is part of what we do at Columbia to make sure that our students feel like they're seen and they belong. In New York City, I'm not sure if you know, finding square feet is really, really hard to do. It's very, very difficult for us to create a space on Columbia's campus because it's like a blood sport to find 25 square feet on campus. So we have to think creatively on our particular campus and in our particular context about how to build belonging. And so I just want to make sure that people aren't out there feeling ashamed of themselves because for whatever reason, they're not able to do that at this moment. The question is not, do you have space, but what are you doing to foster belonging on your campus for military connected students? For those of you who have beautiful spaces and that's working for you and your students appreciate those, that's amazing. That's a good thing because it's working on your campus. It's a working practice for you. Um, and again, we won't go through these on every metric, but I just want to show you here that we take real pains to create an easy explanation for what these different maturity levels look like relative to metric 2. So in the initiating stage, you have disconnected communication, no student group opportunities for veterans, no orientation or events for veterans or military connected students. So basically that would be a situation where your student veterans arrive either in person or virtually, because many of you, I'm sure, have large virtual components to your programs. And there's no real sense that there's any community for veterans specifically. They're just sort of processed as every other student. A rising practice in this area area would be there are communication lists, there's informal student group activity, maybe limited events or orientation sessions to give students a sense that there is some community. A robust foundation would be regular veteran-led events, institutional communication strategy, perhaps an affinity space or a belonging strategy, and embedded orientation components, and then a transformative leader in this particular metric of connecting your communities to resources and each other would be fully integrated communications, cross-campus affinity culture, embedded leadership pathways, peer networks, etc. So again, and the reason people have asked me several times, they're like, why is this a flash diagnostic? Why are you calling it, why is it not just a diagnostic? The reason we call it a flash diagnostic is because my suspicion is that every single one of you on this call already know roughly where your maturity level is relative to this metric. I mean, you could have a conversation about it. You could bring your student veteran leaders in. You could bring senior leadership in. You could spend a day doing this, but you already kind of know, right, where you live relative to these different rubrics. And that's what allows this assessment to happen actually very quickly. Um, we're going to talk at the end of the session about how you can use this tool to have pretty transformative conversations on your campus and position yourself relative to senior leadership to advocate for things you need. But I will tell you that I think what's really special about this tool is that you can get a pretty quick assessment. I think in under 30 minutes, you can sort of say, okay, I have a better sense now of where I think we're living relative to these 8 metrics and kind of where our ecosystem is sitting overall. Um, those conversations only get more productive as you spend more time on them and bring more stakeholders in to have them. On to the remainder of the metrics. And again, one last time, I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. A, B, C, D, and E could very easily be followed by F, G, H, I, J, and K. These are not all of the things that you need to check off. These are representative examples of the types of things that belong in metric 2. Self-inventorying campus resources, metric 3. Financial aid and GI Bill expertise. Housing access. Academic advising, health and wellness resources, 4-year support, graduate school resources, career education. This particular metric is simply asking what kinds of other resources do you have on your campus for military connected students? So metric 1, do we even know who they are, right? Metric 2, do they know who each other are? Once we know who they are, do they connect to each other? Do they have a sense of community on campus? Number 3, what are the things we're doing on our campus to support them? What are the programs? What are the offices? Who are the staff who know something about these particular students? This is a metric that a lot of people feel really good about relative to their schools. If there are places in this flash diagnostic that make you feel like a little bit self-conscious, this metric is often a place where people are like, yeah, we're doing a lot of these working practices. We do have a person who can speak to them about wellness. We do have resources relative to academic advising or tutoring services. We do have disability accommodations on campus. We do have a career advising track or center for folks, right? So this is often kind of a feel-good metric because a lot of schools are doing a lot of these things. They don't necessarily have to be veteran specific. We just need to make sure that someone in the career office knows what a veteran is. It would be cool if someone in the counseling office knows what a veteran is. It would be cool if someone in the housing and in the housing office knows what a veteran is, right? And again, you'll see the 4 maturity levels written here very clearly, giving you a sense of what they mean. The initiating stage, no audit or understanding of resources fit for veterans, inconsistent referrals, all the way to the transformative leader. That you have a resource inventory that is robust, continuously updated, you have proactive partnerships across academic units, and you have tailored services in place, often being kind of shaped by the people on your campus and your student veterans themselves. Metric 4, okay, we know who our veterans are, number 1. 2, we're connecting them to each other and to resources. Number 3, we know what those resources are. Number 4, what is our policy around veterans on campus? A lot of people who come to my sessions will say, but RJ, this is above my pay grade. I don't create policy on my campus. Policy is created by senior administration. And my answer is, you're right. Very few of us have the power to shape policy on our campus, but policy on your campus has a profound effect on your student veterans. So it's something that if we're going to do a hardcore audit of our veteran support ecosystem, we can't do that without taking seriously the question of policy. What kinds of policies are in place? And again, our working practices, do we have reserve duty, absence, and reentry policies in place that are humane and understanding? When our students who are in the reserves are activated, does our university know what to do with those students? Do they have a process in place to help them seamlessly um, respond to their service obligations, right? What is the policy around reserve duty, absence, and reentry? Do we have disability accommodations specific to veteran contexts, right? Does our disability office or our wellness office understand the specific needs that students might have, or students that come on, and have service connected disabilities? Are they prepared to understand those? Do we have support for spouses, dependents, and caregivers? Do we have advisory structures on our campus that have student veteran representation, right? So on our student council or on our faculty senate, are our student veterans represented in those spaces? Do we have some embedded institutional flexibility when we're talking to faculty, et cetera? So this is the policy piece. Um, if people often kind of feel good about metric 3, sometimes we have a little moment of self-consciousness about metric 4, because again, we very often don't have control of policy. I will say to all of you, the most powerful advocates for policy change on your campus are your student veterans themselves. When student veterans say out of their mouths that they need a policy to change, senior administration will often hear that request differently from them than from us. So this is one of the reasons why having a veteran advisory council on your campus can often be not only good for you, but they can also become kind of a catalytic force when it comes to questions around things like policy. Metric 5, mentorship, mentoring students and relational support. Um, what are we doing to mentor our students on campus? This is another sort of belonging and inclusion piece. Um, are there peer-to-peer mentorship programs on your campus? Again, these are working practices. This could mean anything in any context for any campus. Do you have faculty, staff, veteran advocate networks? Do you know who on your campus faculty happen to be military connected or veterans, right? Are there structured academic and professional mentoring opportunities? Do students, for example, understand the opportunity to grow, to be mentored in a lab or mentored in a research context? Um, is there life stage or transition support around, post discharge to graduation? Are we thinking clearly about that first semester when students arrive on campus and they're very often not just transitioning to college, but transitioning out of service? And is there any connection to alumni around mentorship networks? These are just a couple of working practices, but we love to see mentoring as part of the sort of audit for a veteran support ecosystem. And I want to be really clear here as well. Um, and this is just me being a civilian veteran serving professional, so please excuse me while I get on my hobby horse for just a titch. But um, you do not need to have veterans mentoring other veterans to have a successful veteran mentorship program. It is entirely possible for veterans to mentor civilians effectively, and it is very possible for civilians to mentor veterans effectively. I actually find mentorship programs to be a very powerful place to bridge the military civilian divide. All we really need to make those mentorship programs work is we need mutual interest in being mentors and being mentees. I know that it's very obvious to have vets mentor other vets, and I think that that can work very well also. Um, But man, if there are people on your campus that want to get to know these folks and want to help them transition to higher ed, that I think is the most important qualification, rather than simply suggesting that no one can help a veteran if they haven't served themselves. So just something to think about as you think about this particular metric. We're almost there. Number 6, developing veteran and military connected talent. So it's one thing to mentor our students, it's another thing to really develop them as part of their time on campus. So some of the working practices that live in this category would be targeted recruitment and enrollment strategies, right? So this is, are we actually targeting veterans as part of our recruitment strategy to bring them to our campus, thinking about our campus and their time with us as a student as part of their larger development professionally and personally? Do we have onboarding courses to help develop our veteran and military connected talent? I think about bridge programs over the summer. I think about first semester sort of extended orientations that I think are very helpful to develop veterans' capacity to succeed in higher education settings. I sometimes ask people, if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about the veteran support ecosystem at every single campus in America, what would you do? And my answer to that is I would implement an extended orientation for veterans in their first semester at every single school everywhere, to help them build community, to help them connect in a way to resources, to help them build a relationship with a faculty member right off the start. I think it's a really cool thing that works in some, but not all cases. What are your career development and transitional skills support? Do these students understand that they have access to fellowships, internships, and research opportunities? And are their graduate professional pipeline in place? Are they connected to alumni? This is a moment where alumni become mission critical in helping create pipelines. I might also add here, I've been telling you all session that it's A, B, C, D, and E, but you could also have F, H, I, G. That's not how the alphabet goes, but you understand what I'm saying. Um, Another thing I would add to this particular metric would be connection to community resources outside of your campus, right? Are they connected to VA resources? Are they connected to local employment opportunities, right? All of these things are about developing veteran talent. So what are you doing to develop your veteran and military connected talent? I would also say that this is an especially important metric for our spouses. So something to think about. Metric 7, building institutional capacity and cultural awareness. This, Leona, goes back to the comment that you made at the very beginning of the session, which is, I just feel like sometimes our faculty and staff don't really know who these students are. This metric is all about, all the metrics so far. Do you understand your veterans? Are you connecting veterans to each other? Do you have resources for veterans? Are you mentoring your veterans, right? Veterans, 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 veterans. And that makes sense. This metric is, what are you doing to make sure that your civilians are ready to help veterans succeed? Your veteran faculty, your veteran staff, your veteran students, your veteran partner, or your civilian faculty, your civilian staff, your civilian students, your civilian partners. Do they have the capacity to understand what these students might need and how they can help? Military cultural awareness training for administration, staff, faculty, and others, narrative engagement initiatives, right, where people tell their stories, practices addressing misconceptions about veterans, inclusion of veteran voices in curricular and pedagogical design, assessment, evaluation, and iterative improvement processes that measure outcomes. So let me give you my favorite in the entire world, my favorite example of something that lives in metric 7. Okay. This came from a little community college that I worked with in Pennsylvania on the flash diagnostic. We ended up having a conversation a little more extensively in the way that any one of you can call me after this engagement and say, RJ, I want to talk more about my specific school. That's my whole job. So like, it's super fun that I get to do that. And I'm going to give you ways to contact me so we can talk more about it. I'm talking to this school in Pennsylvania, and I'm talking to this higher education professional who is the only person in her work, she's a school certifying official that also does the school's sort of green zone training, who also oversees the sort of small veterans lounge, who also does case management around student veterans, right? She does all the things. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing for metric 7? Have you thought about it? And she's like, yeah, I try to do some green zone training, but it's hard to get faculty in the room. And she's like, so I did something really stupid. I'm kind of embarrassed about it. I'm like, I love stupid things, so like tell me everything about it. Um, and she's like, well, twice a year, once each semester, um, I throw a pizza party, um, and I give students, listen to this, you're gonna die. I give students gold stars, like these little golden tickets, like Willy Wonka tickets, and that ticket entitles them to invite one faculty member to the pizza party. And it's become this thing where like faculty get very competitive about being invited to the veteran pizza party every semester because the golden ticket is like this huge honor for a student veteran to invite them to go. Um, and and like the students love doing it and the faculty love coming. And I don't know, it's just kind of a stupid thing. And I'm like, dude, this is the coolest idea I've ever heard to do cultural competency and military awareness training, like ever. Like, what better way, what better way um, to help civilian faculty and staff understand who this population is than by inviting them to spend some time with them in an informal way outside of class. I think it's genius. I just got done telling you all that I don't believe in best practices, and here I am being like, throw a pizza party. It's the best practice, right? Um, it was just a really special way, and I think it drives home the point for all of you, um, that this stuff doesn't have to be fancy or formal or expensive to be effective, right? Building community doesn't have to have a huge budget line item underneath it. So this is just an example of that. Um, we have one more metric, and then we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use this thing. The last metric, which is a really fun one, is advocating for institutional commitment. You'll see the working practices under metric 8 are public-facing institutional statements about military-connected students, leadership investment in military-connected inclusion, partnerships and policy engagement, veteran and military family inclusion in strategic planning at the university level, external advocacy. The way that I talk about this metric in regular time is, how is your school messaging their support for this population on days that are not Veterans Day? Is that happening on your campus, right? Because we know that Veterans Day is the day, right? And I appreciate Veterans Day expressions of appreciation for this population. Um, but I also think that messaging that only happens on that day suggests that there might be a little bit of a gap. Are there other opportunities to amplify veteran voices? Are there other opportunities for your institution to use its megaphone to donors, to alumni, and to the community to say, the work of educating veterans is important work and we're really proud to do it? And that would be the sort of institutional commitment um, piece. And again, this is often above. Um, most of the people on this call may not have a lot of control over institutional commitment, but this is another place where student veterans can help. So those are the 8 metrics. I'm going to open up for questions here in just a little bit. I just want to show you one last thing. And again, this is part of the tool. Um, in addition to the guide itself, we have also built a facilitator guide that is included in the actual tool that allows you as a higher education professional to bring this tool to stakeholders on your campus, to use it as a way to begin conversations around veteran support ecosystem on your campus. So you'll see here the beginning of the facilitator guide. It actually walks you step by step through running a session on how to talk about this particular tool. Um, and so we just create that to make sure that people feel comfortable utilizing this. And so that's there for people's use. Last thing I'll say, a couple ways that I've seen this tool used already. We have several institutions that we've partnered with who have started using this tool as a way to think about strategic planning for their offices for the coming year. So not only what are our weaknesses and strengths, but how can we prioritize the things we want to do next? That has been one thing I've seen done very proactively. Number two, I've seen several schools utilize the metrics and use them one at a time as kind of working sessions to start thinking about these different pieces of the veteran ecosystem puzzle. I've also had several schools utilize this tool to help frontline veteran staff at their veteran resource center, so their student veterans, think about what veteran support looks like at their school. I've seen SVA chapters use this tool to create advocacy to senior administration. I've also seen people beginning to use this tool to get ahead of accreditation processes that they know are coming in 2 or 3 years, right? To use the flash diagnostic as like a ready-made architecture to think about the work that they're doing and how to organize their various efforts. And the last thing I've seen, which is perhaps the most exciting, is it has really empowered several of our partners um, to start telling the stories of the work that they're doing that they're proud of. Right. It's one way. A lot of times when we think about audits, I don't know how you guys feel, but like when I hear that someone's going to audit me, like that's not a nice feeling. Like I'm always get a little, my mother would call agita around being audited, right? Because I feel like people are looking for where I've messed up. Um, this tool, I hope, yes, it's meant to help you think about where there might be gaps, but it's also meant to help you narrate to other people and to yourselves and to your student populations and to your senior administration what you're getting right, and what you're doing well, and really highlight the things that are working on your particular campus. So we're excited about that too. I'm going to take some questions, if any of you have any. But what I am going to do really quickly, please don't leave, because I just want to do one more thing. This is the important piece where I'm going to get a little bit of feedback from you. And also you're going to have an opportunity to request this tool. So let me just back to this presentation and let me just share this QR code with you. So this QR, well, there's this, and then this is how to contact me. But first um, this is going to send you to an Airtable document where you're going to be able to fill out some questions about whether or not the session was helpful, whether or not you learned something that might help you in your day-to-day work, whether or not you felt that it built your capacity to think about some of these topics. But it's also going to give you a very easy way to request a copy of this tool. And we'll just make sure, yes, absolutely the slides will be available. I'll make sure that Leona gets them, so that you can have my hardcore audit slide where those punk guys are screaming. Going to make sure those are available to you. Um, I'm also going to share in about 2 minutes, I'm going to share my LinkedIn profile QR code so that you can connect with me as part of your professional network. But this is what I want everyone on the call to understand. Um, Not only do we present this tool, and again, completely free of charge, completely open access resource, right? All we ask at the center is that if you utilize this tool or want to utilize this tool, you just let us know, because we're so interested to learn. Leona, I'll be right with you. Um, uh, we're so interested to learn what schools are learning, about themselves and about their population and practices, and that helps us fund our work when we learn more. Um, but we can also at CVTI, we can help you administer this particular tool. If you'd like some help, we can talk about your particular campus. We can do all kinds of cool collaborations. I've had a couple of schools that have a few grant dollars that they wanted to use to bring this tool to campus. So a lot of ways we can work together to make this helpful. Leona, I'd love to take the question.
Awesome. We have two quick questions here in the chat, and we have about 3 minutes till our official end time. RJ can stay on just a little longer. So
Yeah.
I know you're all kind of on your lunch break. So if you're kind of rushing through lunch and have to get back, we totally understand. But our questions, RJ, are RJ, how do you recommend folks go about starting this diagnostic, do they do the whole thing, then come back to sections they want to focus on? Or do you recommend that they focus on a chosen section, one or two at a time?
Sure. I think the best way to do this is to sit down over a lunch break, just yourself, and just go ahead and gut maturity level yourself in each metric. Just go ahead and run through the whole tool really quickly just to get your hands around kind of what's in it. And I think very quickly you'll get a sense of two things. One, where your strengths and weaknesses are. So it also functions a little bit like a SWOT analysis, but that's built specifically for military connected support ecosystems, right? But two, it'll also give you a pretty quick sense of which of these things you have more control over and which of these things you have less control over, right? Um, so that's also helpful because there are just pieces of this that you have a lot of control over, and there are pieces of it that are really, beyond your scope of work. And so if you go through it just quickly, I think that's helpful. And then once you go through it, then you can sort of come back and you can say, let me focus on a particular metric. I'm also going to suggest um, I think this makes a wonderful sort of exercise with your SVA chapter. If you have any student veterans working front line or any student veteran leaders on your campus, I think there's what we perceive as higher education professionals, and then there's what they perceive as sort of users of our campus culture. And I think how we respond to this flash and how they respond to this flash is a really interesting thing to sort of interrogate a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you. One more quick question for you. Any plans for any of your partners to share their experience, results, and or outcomes at an upcoming conference or other event?
Yes, I think so. So the folks over at William and Mary have been using this tool now for about a year. They've been using it to stage what they're calling catalytic conversations on their campus. They're going metric by metric and sort of having uh, qualitative conversations with stakeholders around where they could be doing different things. So I'm working with them to talk a little bit at a conference coming up this conference cycle. Um, Also doing some exciting work with Old Dominion University. And then we've got a couple of SVA chapter leaders. So we're working really closely with Student Veterans of America and Abby Kinch to maybe at NatCon coming up, sort of present some findings from some SVA chapters who have used the tool to think about their ecosystems on their campus.
That sounds incredible. Thank you so much, RJ. We do have a quick blurb here in the comments, everyone. Is anyone going to the California Veterans Summit? We believe that's the name in Palm Springs next week. If so, Heather Despain, who is associated with Pikes Peak State College and MilVet Navigator, would love to connect and say hello. So please feel free to drop that in the chat. If you have any questions that you didn't drop in the chat or we didn't have a chance to get to, please feel free to email me directly. I did drop my email address directly into the chat box. It's just my name, easy peasy, leona.lopez@ucdenver.edu. I'll make sure we get those to RJ and get you answers within the next 2 weeks, as long as having this presentation, this recording available to you within the next 2 weeks. So we'll just keep an eye on your inbox. We'll make sure you have all the information you need. Please take a moment also to submit that survey to RJ if you have an opportunity. And with that, we are officially wrapping up this webinar. This was an incredible webinar, RJ. Thank you so much on behalf of CO-ACME and MilVet Navigator, who was our co-sponsor for this webinar. This was incredible. You've given us a lot to think about. For everyone who's still on this call, thank you for your time. We know that it is precious and valuable, and it was most likely over a lunch break. So thank you for joining us here today. If anyone would like to join the CO-ACME team, the executive team, please let us know. I know a couple of us will be phasing out here in the next couple of months to make room for new fresh blood. So please let us know if CO-ACME is something you'd be interested in joining. And please keep an eye out. We will be doing these webinars quarterly. So everyone, please join me in thanking RJ. RJ, it was incredible. We appreciate your time, and we hope you all have a good weekend and a great rest of your day. Thanks for being here today, everybody. Take care now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.